Talking there.
Yeah.
Yay! Hello! Welcome everybody. I'm Tara, founder of D&D in a Castle, and we are at the castle. Or D&D in a Castle, and I'm sitting with one of our dungeon masters, Chris Hinckley, who's running a game this round here in the UK at our event starting tomorrow. So we're very excited to get to talk about D&D in a Castle just before we go in to begin the adventure beginning tomorrow. So, Chris, welcome to the castle. First time running in this event, in this venue, I mean.
It is. Not my first time at Walworth, but my first time running here. It is a beautiful castle. And I'm very excited to be running in the dungeon underground.
That's right. You are in the dungeon, running hardcore mode this round. I think we have met with you recently to talk about your hardcore mode campaign. So if you're curious about all of the horror that Chris has in store for his players coming up this week, you can find his hardcore mode campaign interview in our history on YouTube and everywhere. But this interview, this DM deep dive, is to talk about a campaign that I am so excited for. This is the one you were running in the spring, in April, and your previous players booked all your tickets immediately. And so we asked you, please, could you come back and do it again? Because we want more people to get to play this game. And it is a testament to your dungeon mastering that your previous players immediately would book whatever you had on offer. And they did. They were lined up ready to go as soon as the tickets came live and booked them all up. And so, that's a nice compliment. But the campaign itself, for those who haven't played with you before, tell us about this charming, lovely campaign that I'm so happy to hear.
Charming and lovely. Let's see. So the game is called Death in the Mossfold. It's an idea that I've had on the back burner for a little bit now. Very specifically, it's a setting that I designed to play with my young daughter. The idea is you are all mice in a kind of Anglo-Saxon Viking era kind of setting, but actually it's all happening in modern day Northumberland. It's just a little park in modern day Northumberland. You can go to Newcastle City if you really want to, but these mice don't know that. They're just there living their lives, fighting, adders, owls, whatever happens to cross their path.
Now, you told me that this is somewhat inspired by a famous book and film that I loved as a child about some mice and some rats with superhuman powers, or super rat powers is more like it, super rat intelligence, specifically The Secrets of Nim. And so that's what makes me very excited to see this campaign come to life and for people to get to play such a unique campaign and be adorable but also violent mice.
Yes.
This could be a nice juxtaposition there of violence and cuteness. So if that sounds like your jam, we can perhaps pull up a link to read about this campaign, or you can go to dndinacastle.com/spring 2026 if you're looking for details on this campaign and every campaign that's being offered next year in the spring, right here where we are coming to you live from this week. So what kind of game is it going to be? Now, I've said cuteness and violence, and I've just sort of made that up because it does have death in the name. So I sort of assume that there is violence and fighting happening. But you are a war games guy. I know that about you. You're a battle history nerd as well as an RPG, TTRPG nerd. So how does that all tie in a game that's about mice in a field?
So it is an inherently cute game. The minis are all little, 1.5-inch tall mice. You can ride. I've got one player who's asking to ride. What's the word I'm looking for? Sparrows. So we have a sparrow rider. We have a weasel rider. Like it's an inherently cute concept. But the natural world's really brutal and really unforgiving. So that's where that starts to come in. An owl does not care if you are if you're small and cute. It's the adult or ancient red dragon of the setting. It's going to murder you and it's going to eat you, and not think twice. And that's the I love that juxtaposition and that kind of those diametrically opposed concepts. The idea that something so cute can be so brutal and violent and bloody. And I think there's space for both as well. I think there's space for the space for players to be those adorable little mice, to have fun, to kind of really revel in the uniqueness of the setting and kind of the scale of the setting, as everything, like, as blades of grass become huge things that you can hide in. Trees become these, I mean, essentially like the castles of the setting. But at the same time, you can really go to town with some of that, with some of the villains, some of the enemies, and kind of that violent aspect of it.
So you must have had to homebrew a lot of stuff here.
Yes.
So
Yes.
So tell me about that. So you say, for example, the owl is the red dragon of the setting. So that is kind of the big bad. In a way, is all of it sort of sentient, or have you sort of taken the D&D stuff and sort of transmuted it into the natural world, or have you taken the sort of realities of nature and added stats to them? Like, how have you approached that process of turning the natural world into a D&D set?
It's somewhere in between. There's aspects of it that are very much taken from nature, having to create kind of stat blocks, or like races, species for the mice, the various types of mice, voles, dormice. I think one player wants to be a hamster. Taking the things that make each of those different species unique and what their kind of little niche in nature, and then turning that into game mechanics has been really interesting. It's very different from what I've done before. On the other side of things, like the owl, for example, is very much taking an existing monster stat block, and turning it or twisting it so that it fits what an owl really is. So, for example, owls don't breathe fire. So, what can I do to hone in on what an owl is, how an owl hunts, what's going to be scary about that owl, and kind of adapt that, for example, that red dragon stat block into something that's much more appropriate to the setting. It's been really interesting.
Is there must be magic. I mean, there's always magic.
Yes.
So you say, this is a field in Newcastle, or, in Northumberland somewhere. But it's also D&D.
Yes.
So tell me about the D&D side. Tell me about how this is in D&D. Like, what kind of D&D game are we talking about? Like, I know what you're doing for hardcore mode, and I've seen what you've built for hardcore mode, and the mind flayers and the darkness and the gothic horror. So what kind of D&D campaign is this going to be?
It should feel like a D&D campaign. It should feel inherently Dungeons and Dragons, but just slightly different. Almost like shifted slightly, like it's ever so slightly out of focus. The magic side of it, I've always had a love of very esoteric, weird magic. And I love the idea that these little mice in our world just have this like little magic system that only they really know about. That's kind of not as, that's what I'm looking for, not as predictable as Dungeons and Dragons magic typically is. Something a little bit dangerous, a little bit more natural. And I'm still playing around with exactly what that means. But it's probably gonna look something along the lines of like the Sorcerer's Wild Magic stuff, bits of that drawn in as things get cast. There's a mechanic in a game I love called Mouse Ritter, where magic, each spell has a way of recharging that spell. So, for example, if you use healing magic, then you have to recharge the spell. You have to kind of bleed onto the rock to give it that magic back. And there's part of me that would like to draw some of that in, almost like a kind of a traditional druidic magic system, as opposed to that very arcane, predictable, safe magic of Dungeons and Dragons.
Right. And in terms of the immersion of your games, As I say, I've seen what you built for Hard Code, I've seen what you've built and what you've created for all of your campaigns. So you've mentioned the little mouse creatures that we're going to have. What else have you got in mind without spoilers? Because I know you build and you print and you craft, and you're not a theater of the mind guy. Or your room is stacked with stuff, possibly more than can fit. We'll see. But tell us a little bit about the world you're going to be creating for people to immerse themselves in.
So my house at the moment is filled with an ungodly number of artificial flowers, the cheapest I can find that look good. I've hacked them apart because none of my existing terrain really works
Right.
for playing a 3-inch tall mouse. So a lot of it's going to be scratch built for this campaign. A lot of it's going to be kind of the big flowers that take on the traditional place of trees. Kind of big patches of grass for players to go and hide in. I'm a big fan of very tactile maps that people can look at and see, oh, I want to do this with this. I see this kind of pebble on the ground, I'm going to run up and hide behind it. That dandelion, is there any chance, I'm a field mouse, can I climb that? Can I climb that dandelion? Yeah, that's kind of what I'm after, is to look at a garden and look at how I can kind of translate that to a 6x4 table. And that's what a lot of my efforts and a lot of my time in charity shops and cheap shops is spent on at the moment. It's looking for just artificial flowers and bits of foliage that I can use.
And for the sort of pillars of the game, the style of the game, the sort of mood, is there a lot of, I mean, I don't know what the story is, I don't know what the premise is. I know it's mice, and that's all I kind of need to know for me. But for others, how much of the premise of the actual story can you share to give a sense of sort of, the level of political intrigue, the level of, combat, what level are these guys going to be playing at? Exploration, sort of what worlds are going to be open to them. Where is it going to sort of sit in that sort of, spectrum of those things? What are people going to get to do?
So in a rare occurrence for my games, I can actually talk a decent amount about this.
Okay.
Which is nice. So the idea is they're the bodyguard of a local king, the king of the Nordhimbra, which is kind of mouse Northumberland. There is an owl in the area. That's been devastating different parts of the kingdom, been devastating local kingdoms, and they set out to build a band to take down this owl. However they want to. So a large part of it is going to be exploration. It's going to be a lot of wandering around the wilderness of Northumberland, searching for this thing, finding where its lair is. And also going to different kingdoms, and there is the opportunity for them to either wage war against other kingdoms to kind of take what they need. Diplomacy, they can go and work with other rulers and kind of say, hey, well, we all want the same thing. We all need this thing dead. How can we do that together? It really is up to the players how they want to do that. But in terms of the pillars, combat's going to be a huge one. It usually is for my games anyway. But yeah, the combat both on a mass scale and on a small scale is probably going to be a big part of that. And exploration. That's kind of exploring the world, exploring the setting, and the like I said, different kingdoms and the different powers and factions is going to be a big part of that.
So are you in touch already with your players for the first round? I mean, I know, yeah. you already know what they're playing, so I was already talking with them. And what are they doing with this? How are they approaching this game?
They are stupidly excited. One of the I won't mention names just because I haven't double checked with them, but one of the players who really set off yes, this is going to be our reunion game. Similarly to you, grew up on a lot of the same things I did. Red Wall, Watership Down, Secrets of Nim. A lot of those things, a lot of those bits of fiction. So he's stupidly excited to come along and play mice. The two youth players from the youth table already have their characters built, and they have already told me their classes that they would like to use. Neither of which fit the kind of the traditional Dungeons and Dragons. The Drake, is it Drake Rider, Drake Warden? Yeah, Drake Warden Ranger. We can't use dragons, so I'm rebuilding that around sparrows and kind of making it make sense for that. I think one of the other players has wanted to play a cavalier, and since he can't ride a warhorse, their preference is a weasel. So we have a weasel rider as well.
So are you taking what your players give you and then sort of crafting the things around them? Or if your players join your game, say for the next round, new players, will you have sort of like pick one of these 5 things and it's kind of pre-built? It sounds like for the first group, you're sort of taking their ideas and kind of building the campaign or building their options based on what they want to do.
Yes. So for both, honestly, once I meet my second week players and kind of get to talk to them, but I very much want to build this around what they would like to do. So if they have a class combination that they want to do, or even if they've got if there are things from a species, like a traditional D&D species, like they like what elves do, I'll try and fit some of that in. I'll try and weave in some of that, some of what they might be after. But in terms of classes and that kind of thing, I'm happy to build stuff. This is something that genuinely I would like to publish at some point anyway. So having that content, having those game mechanics built, just benefits me in the long run. And I like seeing my players get to play what they like to play. So
yeah. So this would be an opportunity for those watching to get in on kind of on the ground level of something completely new, something totally original, but just from the mind of Chris Haley, being manifest and getting to do the things that you want to do with this idea. So it's going to be, even though the campaign is built or is being planned, there's a lot of opportunity for customization, a lot of opportunity for input into how all of this becomes a story.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of playing this at D&D in a castle, you said you kind of built this world for your daughter, and she is a 6-year-old. So has it evolved and changed a lot? And also, I'm imagining you're playing that as like an ongoing campaign versus like, a tight 6 sessions that sort of has to wrap. Has it changed a lot since you've been working on it?
Not really. It's always been fairly violent. My daughter's introduction to Dungeons and Dragons was being ambushed by a spider, and her reaction to that was to run away from the fight, come back, ambush the spider itself, murder it, drag it to the top of a mountain, and feed it to a dragon. So my daughter really isn't too bothered about violence. So no, not a whole lot has changed. The themes will be more adult, to use that phrase. The kind of the way that things work might be a little bit differently, a little bit different. There'll probably be more kind of political intrigue than I might do with my daughter.
Right.
But functionally, it's the same campaign.
But it's not going to be a kids game.
No, not by any stretch. I don't run kids games.
Even for the kids. Even for the kids, I don't think you're going to get like a fluffy game from Chris. No. You're going to get a stabby game with a lot of mental torture. Yeah, that's fun. I think we have some questions, or a question, and I do want to say, if you have a question for me about D&D in a castle, about anything, or for Chris about his game, about dungeon mastering, about running games at D&D in a castle, any of the above, just pop them in the chat. We'll try to grab them. We'll try to get to them all. You can also always email us or find us on our website. But what is our question, Hopper, in the background running the show?
Cole asks, I'm curious, if each of you were transported into this world, what little critter would you be?
Ooh, I wrote it, and I know just how unlikely any of them are to survive. What would I be?
I gotta be the hawk. Like, I gotta be like a bird of prey. I'd be the monster. I think that's my obvious choice.
Fair.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
good shout.
Yeah.
What would I be? Something that either something that can hide underground or something that can fly. A mouse or a bat sounds good. Sorry, a sparrow or a bat sounds good. Bats have the advantage of being nocturnal.
Also, a mole was probably good. Just go down, just don't come out. You're
Hey.
safe.
Sit and eat earthworms all day.
Yeah, it sounds good. Come down. Best chance to survive.
No, yeah, I'd say one of those. Sparrow, get flied out. Bat, same thing, but at night. If I had to pick one of the classes that I'm letting people play, probably a field mouse. I like the idea of being able to climb up little grass stalks. It seems fun.
Nice. When you play as a player, now you're one of our dungeon masters, but I assume sometimes you get to play, or
Rarely.
always to. I
Rarely.
was gonna say, when you do, what kind of characters do you like to play?
Okay, so either ones that help the DM do what they're trying to do. I'll play kind of the DM PC.
Right.
The one that's just there to kind of help get everybody else doing what they want to do and push the story in the right direction. Or I'll do the polar opposite of that and do everything I can to torpedo the campaign. With like traditionally, I'll use my orphan halfling divination wizard / rogue, whose whole thing is just avoiding combat wherever possible.
Oh,
Use like illusions to hide people, or charm person to famously use charm person to avoid a fight with the big bad evil guy, and got them to give us magic weapons. That was fun. Yeah, generally one of those two things. Depends on the DM, how much I think the DM can deal with me being a problem, and how much I think the other players just need somebody to guide them in the right direction.
cool. And in terms of all the campaigns, you've run several campaigns at D&D in a Castle before. How do you think this one is going to be similar or different as a castle, as a D&D in a Castle campaign? Because D&D in a Castle campaigns, they kind of live in their own sort of subset, you know? They're not home games that go on for however long you can keep your group together or morph or whatever.
Yep.
And they're not one shots, you know, that are sort of, you know, in and out in a single story, in a single sitting. So as a D&D in a Castle type of campaign, how does this compare to the other games that we've run?
It kind of draws from a lot of bits from all of them, I suppose. It's got a lot of the kind of exploration that my first game had, the Dreamer Betwixt, which was all about going around the vastness of wild space and finding allies to go fight Beholder. It's got some of the what's the word I'm looking for? In the Chronicle Mode game, it was kind of a very not linear, but it had a much more linear path to it, and a final battle that it all built up towards, which this one, which the Mustfold kind of has elements of as well. And then this one, the one that I'm running this week, it has a lot of it kind of draws eldritch elements from that. If you're a mouse, an owl, or an adder, or one of those big prey creatures is kind of unknowable, and a genuine, what's the word I'm looking for, kind of existential threat, which is a lot of what I'm doing this week as well. So it kind of draws some of that in as well. So honestly, it feels kind of like a thematic mixture of the three campaigns that I've run or will run already.
What rule set are you using for this game? Or are you, like, I know you're homebrewing a lot of stuff, but in terms of the rules themselves, are you doing 2014, 2024, some mixture?
Typically, I run a mixture of the two. I like 2024 a lot. I think it's got it does an excellent job of picking up on a lot of the foibles that 2014 had. There's some things that I'm not so much of a fan of, that I tend to homebrew a little bit. Stuff like DM critical hits. I allow people to kind of draw from 2014 if the stuff they want to use. And typically, because I'm generally not too bothered about game balance between players and DM, because I know that I can just fundamentally change physics if I really want to. And I let people pick spells from either version and just treat them as different versions. So, for example, if somebody wanted to use the 2014 version of Counterspell instead of the 2024 version, I would let them. But they would have to choose to use that version. They wouldn't be able to kind of swap between the two. They could learn both, but they wouldn't be able to just swap between them.
Right, so they have to they get to pick, but they have to kind of pick. Great. So I want to ask you about dungeon mastering at D&D Castles. And because you've done all kinds, you've been dungeon mastering for a long time, playing for a long time. You've run in various settings, modes, rule sets, editions. You've kind of run the gamut. And what have you learned about dungeon mastering from running games at D&D Castle?
It's a very specific skill set, is what I've learned. Having run for a lot of public games before here, I kind of knew how to interact with strangers. I knew how to draw people in. I knew how to. I've gotten very good at explaining the rules to people or how I interpret the rules. But I'd only ever run individual sessions that would go on indefinitely, or that within a campaign that could go on indefinitely, with people that would drift in and out. What I'd never done before was run a campaign for the same 6 players in a very specific set time. And one of the things that I think the biggest thing that I've learned is how to create a campaign that has structure, that has like a defined plot, but that is malleable. It's kind of amorphous. So as we play through and as I get to learn the players and how concise or kind of verbose they can be, how I can adjust that campaign and move, like shift stuff around or move stuff out or amalgamate important NPCs into one character, and just be a lot more flexible in a way that in a very specific way that I've never had to be before.
Right.
It's been a big learning experience. Not necessarily an easy one, not one that I've always found. I don't say comfortable, but that's probably the best word I can think of at the moment. But it's been good. It's been very, very good. I'm a better DM because of it.
That's cool. So we've been talking with Chris Hately. We have a question from one of our viewers. What do we got?
Peter asks, as a DM, what's one of the most surprising or delightful ways your players have taken a surprising direction or made a surprising choice? And how do you approach parties going off in novel directions?
That is a very good question. Okay, I've used this example before, but I think I genuinely think it's the best. It's the best answer. My youth table. One of my players never gave me his backstory ever. Well, no, it's a lie. Sorry, I think he gave it to me the day before the event started. His character was terminally ill. And the player had no interest in healing him at all. The other players tried to think of all sorts of stuff to do to heal this character because they all loved him. But the player had no interest in it and was more interested in kind of this guy's end of life story and how that character could help the other people around him. And to me, the best example of the way that he did this, for reasons far too close to go into, one of the other players had his alignment changed, and that impacted huge parts of his character. And this other player, Falala, the Cyclops cleric, grave cleric, had a chat with him, and they basically did therapy in this hammock on the front of a spelljammer, and he throughout the conversation, just this quiet little thing between two players while all the other players were chatting about something completely different, kind of not paying attention to what was going on. I realized that there was this moment where Falala could kind of do something to help. So I said, "Hey, you don't know what's going to happen, but you think that you can give some of your remaining time to help this character." And without a thought, the player said, "Yeah, absolutely, I want to." And so he took on 2 permanent levels of exhaustion happily to change this character's alignment back. And for me, that's one of the most selfless things I've ever seen in a D&D player or a D&D character. And it changed a lot of how I view D&D narrative and how players can kind of feed into that. It fundamentally changed the campaign from that point. It changed the focus of it. It stopped being about killing the beholder at the end. It started being about how does this guy end? Like, how does his life end? I think that's probably the best example I can give.
Wow. Yeah, those players in that campaign are really something.
Lots of tears. Lots of tears
Yeah.
at the end of that game.
A lot of tears, that's a common story of D&D the Castle on the final day. A little catharsis going on closing day. So I've been chatting with Chris Hately, who's about to run hardcore mode at D&D the Castle, literally starting tomorrow, and who's coming back this spring to run a mouse-centric game. Yes, you heard that, a mouse-centric game called Death in the Muzzfold. Not a child's game. This is not Beatrix Potter.
No.
This is something else entirely. What I would like to ask you to do is to invite our viewers to join you next spring for your campaign here at D&D Castle and take us on with you.
Well, if you are a fan of The Animals of Farming Woods, Watership Down, the Red Wall series, Secret of Nim, any of that classic anthropomorphic fiction, very small anthropomorphic fiction, head to the website, get yourself involved. It's going to be a very fun, very stressful, very likely very bloody campaign. Maybe prep some backup characters. Yeah, get yourself involved. Come along, join us. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Wonderful. And I hope to see you at a castle soon. Thanks for
Thank you very
joining
much.
us, Chris. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you soon.